So here's our agenda for today. Might seem heavy, but we're going to be rocking and rolling through. And I promise I will hold you hostage beyond that 7/8 o'clock y'all's time. I know it's probably been a long day. So again, I appreciate you joining. We'll talk about what assessments actually is, have time immersion in the teacher and the student experience, being able to give you some practical ways to introduce assessments to your students if you need to. And then also being able to assess a data report, and then also giving you like a practical plan for action as far as like how to introduce assessments to your students, how to give them a little leeway. We have videos and different links if they're, because as we know, with students, they need practice, they need exposure before we just throw something onto them. And then we'll wrap it up. All right, so goal for today, really want to make sure you leave this time understanding, again, the teacher and the student experience, being able to do the basics of finding and assigning content with your curriculum, or if you are utilizing a different curriculum, different ways that you can access content, and then just how to have a practical way to introduce assessments to your students. Before we go deeper into there, just an overview, ASSISTments is a formative assessments tool. So it's not one of the things that we really lean in and harp on is like the practice of formative assessment, allowing students to be exposed to and allowing teachers to be empowered by like targeting specific classroom instruction in which you can monitor what students are doing in that real-time data. So honestly, the benefit of assessments, and I can say I use it in my classroom when I was a teacher, and I also supported teachers using it as I was an instructional coach, was really to have that real-time data to be able to do deeper analysis of and spend time really learning and leaning into like where students need additional support or advancements, because we know that certain students have operate above grade level, and we have students that are at grade level as well as needing some additional support. So being able to ensure all students have what they need just in time. Just grounding in our definition of what we at ASSISTments mean about formative assessments is really that plan process. So teacher and or student using assessment-based evidence and to adjust what's currently going on. We say students too, because we have ways for students to be able to see how they're doing, what's going on. Again, getting that real-time data and feedback, which I'll be able to show you in this process as well, to be able to adjust what they're doing. And it really is about that just-in-time learning. So I'm just going to take a moment to pause and reflect. And you can shoot this in the chat, or again, you can share it loud. It's really up to you. So what's one of the biggest challenges that you feel like you might face when you're implementing formative assessments within your curriculum? I'll just let the timer go. I see in the chat we have like, can always provide immediate feedback. Yes, definitely, especially depending on how many, if you teach multiple classes with multiple students. So that's one thing, being able to not provide that immediate feedback. I agree. Any other things that are coming up when you think about challenges that you face? Yeah, I agree. Sometimes you lose track of time and forget. There's so much to do in so little time, especially like, yep, we know like, oh, COVID happened, it's a thing, but like we're still dealing with the loss of learning and the gaps in learning from students. And so it's a lot to be like curriculum, scope and sequence, all the things, and trying to make sure that you are adequately preparing your students for what they need while also like adhering to like certain time parameters. So I definitely agree. And yes, absent students. That was always a thing. I mean, it still is a thing when you're looking at, we went through this phenomenal lesson and all the things, and so wasn't at school. And so when they do come back, it becomes, oh, let me catch you up. Here's the folder of things that you missed, but not being able to really do that deeper intentionality with like, oh, let's catch you up on like concepts that you might need additional support or reinforcement in. These are all really great things. Really appreciate you all sharing in the chat. I know we have about 20 seconds left, but I'll go ahead and pause that and we can keep moving forward. So just a really quick of like how assessments actually works and operates. First thing is like the teacher assigns online. So you have your platform, you have the different curriculum or skill builders or different things that you might want to assign. So you assign those to your students. Second thing is students complete the assignment and get that immediate feedback. Teachers are then able to analyze results instead of grading. And so step 3 is probably my favorite. Having been a high school teacher, having 6 different classes, and generally I had about like 30 so kids in each class, being able to analyze the data as opposed to just grading and kind of getting like a high level, this is what's going on. Being able to spend time doing deeper analysis of the data is always like really key and something that I love the most. And then finally, the teacher being able to discuss data and target the time, like the things that students need for additional practice or additional support or for advancement as well. And so like closing that loop of actually discussing data with our students allows us to actually be able to go deeper into to target and reach and support the needs that students actually have. And I do see one other thing, being able to reach all learning levels and test their learning correctly. I think that's a phenomenal thing, like with the challenge. And that's one benefit that assessments has, is that being able to be intentional about where students are, what specific students need in that moment, and then also being able to adjust accordingly. So just wanted to share a really quick video just about one of our teachers that was been a part of assessments, loves and supports assessments, and what she thinks and feels assessments is really beneficial to the classroom.
Oh, you can teach math without assessments, just your life would be a lot harder. If you're doing on paper, you're gonna have to have 30, plus pieces of paper in front of you and look at each one of them. And so the grading piece is really fast and it's real time. So yes, you cannot teach without assessments because you're going to be wasting a lot of time and you don't get to then see what the students needs right away instead of wasting your time, papers and stuff. So don't teach without assistance. You can, but don't. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. So that's just one of our teachers that's really been along in the process with us, just naming like the benefits of assessment. So we're not saying like don't use paper and pencil, but what we are saying is with utilizing assessments, you get the data that you need in real time and you're able to apply the analysis of that data to go deeper with what your students need. Just an overview of what we'll be offering the free webinars for this year. We have the first one, which was where we currently are, step by step to getting started. Then there's the second part of this, which will be in September, from learning data to learning growth, where we're spending a little bit of time deep diving into like a data report and how you can really be intentional with analysis. And then throughout the school year, we'll have office hours. So just those moments where you can like pop in and be like, help, what is this? Or wanting a deeper conversation. Each one will be targeted around something specific. So new features or a focal point or around data. In the first one in February, it'll be a little bit more around like data analysis or protocols or different steps you can take with your data from assessments. And so if that's something that you think that you would love or find beneficial, we'll definitely have the opportunity for you to sign up for those. So again, in our agenda, we're going to dive into like the teacher experience as well as the student experience. So I'm just going to do a little demo for you. When you log into assessments, this will be what your platform that you should see. Here you'll have your name at the top once you've signed in. But when you first log in, you have our content library. So here are all the things that you'll have access to. So even if you teach Engage or if you teach Eureka, or if you teach illustrative math or open up research, whichever curricula you use, we have that here. But we also have some other components of curriculum to be able to utilize and as well as support with your learning. There's a couple different ways that you can search for assignments. Here you can search, like if there's a specific standard or you want to do some additional practice or you're wondering like, where's this one lesson at? You can look up here in our search bar. to search all of our standards or all Common Core standards. You also can type in the specific codes or standards and it'll populate there for you. Or you can just go straight to a curriculum. So let's say I'm teaching illustrative math, a fifth grade, could go to whatever that lesson is. And this, all the things on from the curriculum is directly here. So if I was a fifth grade teacher, we were doing unit 4. This is the student facing cool downs, all the different things that are accessible from the textbook. We have it here online. A couple things to note: if there is a Spanish version, we are working to ensure that that is also infused within the curriculum. But I do believe our illustrative math for sure has most of them. One thing to know is to pay attention to your problems assigned here. So if you were searching a standard or if you're searching something specific that you want students to get additional practice on, you'll have all of anything in our search library. And so you probably don't want to assign like 50 something problems. But once you get to this space, if it's whether the student facing task or cool down or practice problems, you can either auto default to where it selects all the problems within a curriculum. Or if you want to assign something specific, then you can just unselect the select all and just scroll through and check whichever problems you're like, yep, these are the ones that I really want my students to be intentional and spend some time in. Once you've selected those, you will click assign a class. And this is here where you can rename that. Here you would assign to whatever class you have. So if you already have your rosters, then this will be based off of your class periods. And so you would assign to that, whichever that class period is, and you can do multiple selects. So if you have multiple classes and you want them to do those assignments, you can do that. And then a couple things to note is that we have the import and sync. So if you set up your account and then you get new students that influx in, more so it's like Google Classroom, you can always import your classes. So like if you did that and you're like, oh, I don't see my second hour or my third hour, or something might be weird, you can import your classrooms here. You also have the opportunity to synchronize your classes. So let's say second half of the year, you have a different group of students, you're able to sync your classroom. That way you have the current roster. Or if you had a previous account set up and it has like archived or older classes, you would just click this button here. But when you set up your account, it should do it for you automatically. So once you've selected the class that you would like to assign your problems to, now you can select your students. And so this is where some of that differentiation could come into play. You can assign this to your entire class, or if you're like, oh, I have a few students that need additional support, or if you're like, oh, these students are really rocking it and I want to give them some advanced problems, then you can select a subgroup of students as opposed to assigning to your entire class period. You can select a release date or time. This feature I like, I didn't have it when I was in a classroom, and when I was one of those teachers that like had a month in advance planned ahead. So if you want to go through and plan out your week or a month or a couple different days, you can select things that have a specific release date so that on that day it'll release to your students, so you don't have to like go back and do that. Or if you have a sub that day, or if you know like you're gonna miss or you have something comes up, you can do this as well to where it releases. You click next, and then you have a couple different options. You can either assign in linear form, and so that's where it's like question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or if you selected 1, 5, and 7, it would still go in numerical order. You can also select random to where the order of the questions pop up randomly. And then the other option is student choice, and that allows for a student to be able to pick and choose which problems they'd like to do. So if they start a problem and they're like, I'm a little stuck, or, oh, I want to come back or do something else, then you have the option to do that. Oh, I see in the chat, is there a question about Canvas? Yes, this can be done with Canvas. So the LMS platforms that we support are Google, Canvas, Schoology, and there's a couple other ones, but those are the most popular ones. Your process will be the same exact way. The one caveat is that with Canvas, you need administrative access to create your account. And so we can send you the link to like what the administrator needs to fill out. So it's just like an additional step, but I can make sure that you get that information before you go. That way you can get your account set up. Yes, when your admin creates it, just like your roster is loaded into Canvas for your regular classroom, it will already be loaded. No problem at all. Okay, and so sorry, back to student choice. With student choice, you also have they have the opportunity to pick and choose which problem they like to do. A couple things here. You can put this in test mode. With test mode, one thing to note, test mode is more of a summative assessment. And so they will only get one opportunity. So the only time we would really suggest that you use test mode is if you're doing an assessment or an exit ticket that you're really like, I want this to be utilized as a summative assessment. If you are looking to do something where you set a time limit, so like even on an exit ticket or something around those lines, you can do a time limit there as well. So you can set a time limit. You can go 30 seconds all the way up to however long you'd like. We also have a phenomenal new resource that's called Redo. And so this is something in which if you have like practice problems, you can click redo, and what this will do is like a student might answer the question incorrectly, it automatically gives them another question that's similar to that question to try it again. So in my mind, even though I didn't have this process, but one of the ways that I've supported schools with utilizing a redo is when they're in like getting prepared for a summative assessment and they're assigning like practice problems. And so they've gone through the lesson. This is something where like we're recapping material and information, being able to utilize redo in a sense of like, let's see how students are doing, and being able to give them that opportunity to redo a problem if they like almost got the answer correct, to gauge to see how are we overall as a class. And then finally, you have the score and delivery. And so we'll talk about what these two things are a little bit more specifically later, but you can either operate under symbols of success or score and class average. So once you pick whichever one you like, you can select that and then you click assign to class. So then at that point, now the students have access unless you've selected for it to be delivered in a specific day. All right, so basically what I'm going to do is show you slide breakdowns of everything I just said, because it probably was like, whoa, a lot of words. So the resources that we have and the curriculum that we have that you can utilize within our, excuse me, sorry, within our curriculum is Illustrative Math, Open Resource, Eureka, Engage New York, and then we also have the Utah Middle School Math Project. So those are the curriculums that we actually have. And then we also have the other resources that you can utilize to pull some, like additional practice problems. And we also have skill builders. When you are trying to find content, log into the website. You can either go find and assign, or as I mentioned earlier, searching through, like if you're looking for a specific standard and you want a multiple pool of questions, you have those options to click from there as well. And then going to either select all or selecting the specific problems that you would like and then assigning to your class. Here is where you again put in like rename the assignment or change it to what you want it to be called. Select your LMS. So it'll say this one has Google Classroom, but as I mentioned before, we also have Canvas. So whatever your LMS platform is, it will be noted there. And then you can click assign to whichever class you'd like. So I'm going to pause and give you a few seconds, or actually a few minutes, to actually assign a problem. So if you haven't started school yet, or if school's about to start, maybe try to go through and assign a problem that is that you would want your kids to do like the first or second week of school or so. So again, go log into ASSISTments, find a problem set that you actually want to assign if you can, because you might not have access to your rosters or things yet, and then choose those assigned options and assign a class if possible. I'll give a few moments and I'll go silent. And if you have a question in the process, feel free to throw it in the chat. I'm just gonna note we got about 25 more seconds. Love that you think this is cool, and that's also very helpful. I always like to give people time to see and then practice. I'm very visual, so I'm also like, let me see it and then leave me alone, let me try it. All right, before we move on, are there any other additional questions or comments or wonderings just about how to assign curriculum or content? Okay, so what I would like for you to do now is I'm gonna put in the chat a assignment for you to be able to see the student experience. So I always like for people to be able to see what it will look like for their student. Even this is, yes, a seventh grade problem. So depending on what grades you teach, you might be like, oh yeah, no, that's not my area of expertise. That's okay. I just want you to see what your students might see and what that looks like. So in the chat, I will add the link there. You should just be able to click on it and it'll take you right to that problem. And I want you to be able to explore it as a student. As a note, there are some triple dots here. So what it'll say is preview problem set as a student, click on that, and then you'll be able to see. I'm going to pause before I turn the timer on just to see if there's anything in the chat. I do see that you're saying that your classes aren't loaded. Yeah, and I will send you the Canvas information. If your school admin have not done it yet, that might be why, or if the rosters aren't up and moving just yet, that also might be why. But I will still make sure I send you that information before we get off of the call today. That way you are sure you have that. And then if there are any questions or anything, you can reach out to us. Yay, happy start to schools early. Okay. All right, so any problems getting onto that actual account to be able to see the student experience? I'm going to pause before I start the timer. I'm proud of you for showing up today because first day I probably would have been taking a nap right now. Oops, sorry. All right, I'll start the timer again. I'll go on mute. So just want you to be able to explore the student experience, but feel free to pop things in the chat if you need to. Just know that we got about 15 seconds left, so I'm gonna go ahead and push pause. Would love to hear or to see in the chat, what are some things that you noticed or even a wondering when looking at the student experience? Or if you like to come off mute, you can also do that. Oh, yes. So one of the questions, how many chances do you get to answer a correct question? Sorry, the question correctly. Apologies. Students have as many times that they like because it is a formative assessment. Like we really wanted students to get that practice. However, what I will say is The way that that looks, if you are like on scores, or we'll talk about the different symbols, is that essentially if a student answers a question incorrectly 3 times, then it will notate like a 0%, or it'll give you a different color indicator. Because while they do have a plethora of times to answer a question, we also know that practicing a problem incorrectly a lot is also not a good practice. And so that does also answer like how many times can you answer incorrectly. A couple of things to note is that there is the help button. And so as you saw, like if you answered it incorrect, it gave you immediate feedback. Students can click the help button and say like, what does that mean, or help me? Generally, it'll give them 2 chances to do that. And if they click the help button again, it'll say show answer. And again, on your side of the report, which we'll look at, you'll be able to see that as well. Any other notices or wonders or questions that you have before we move forward? Okay, feel free to ask more into the chat that come up for you, and I will definitely answer them, but we'll keep progressing forward. So just a few things, how do students access their assignment? So whatever your LMS platform is, if it's Google, if it's Canvas, all those things, they will log into their Canvas account. I'll go Canvas because I know that was a question earlier. And then they'll be able, for their first time, they'll have to create a new account. If they've already created an account, it's just like when they log in, it'll go straight to the screen. To answer your question, yes, you will be able to see how many tries a student has had on a question. We'll look at a report in a moment, and also the notate of how those symbols that you saw, because I'm pretty sure it was in symbols of success, what those symbols represent and everything. So you'll be able to see, oh, Charmaine tried this problem 2 times and got it correct eventually, or she tried it 2 times and then asked for the answer. But we'll go over that as well. When your student starts an assignment, they'll see this where it's a blank circle. This was one a little of our newer features. And so they'll be able to see like how many they've completed or how many problems they have left. So for instance, we know fire drills, we know time runs out or different things, or if they're at home and you've assigned something for them to do and then they go eat and come back, they'll be able to see like, I started here and now that the progress, and then they would just be able to again start the assignment from where they left off. So that's something that's nice and beneficial. And you as a teacher are also able to see that as well, the percentage that's completed. So if you assign something to me, if I was your student and I only did like 20% of the problems, or if I'm almost finished with the assignment, which is nice if you're doing problem sets while in the classroom to kind of gauge where students are. In your student view, just a few things. We do have all the problems listed on the left side. So one of the nice parts of like, again, if you assign a student choice, they will be able to click through and see the different problems. So before it was just one at a time in linear form. If you put this in random, then the order of which the question comes up will also be there. But students will always be able to see like the questions, what they are, if they want to click around and see like, maybe I want to try this problem first, or maybe I want to try this, or maybe they want to try something that they feel is a little bit more challenging for them first. They have that opportunity. On the right-hand side, you'll see the get help button. So that's where like if a student is needing additional support or like, I don't really know, they'll just like get help. And the first, you also might see like show explanation or additional support. And so when you see that, students are able to, it gives them a hint first. And again, if they've hit that button at least twice, then it'll say show answer, because that kind of 3 times operates in the sense of like if a student is asking for hints multiple times, then they might need additional support. One of the questions was, if a student starts to answer a question through drawing, etc., is their work saved automatically as they go? Phenomenal question. Yes. However, if they do not click next, like to the next problem, then it won't actually like save onto the problem. So it's like, yes, it's there, but if like their computer shut down or closed, and then they come back to that problem, it will start back from where they currently were, which is a nice thing because we know fire drills, all the things. And we'll also be able to look at an open response problem as well. So that way you can see that. That's a really good question. As you noted, probably some of you got some questions wrong, maybe purposely. You are able to see corrective feedback or intermediate feedback. So if you got the answer correct on the first try, it's like, great, keep going, good job. You'll get those little things. If the answer is incorrect, then obviously it'll say, no, that like incorrect answer and that's not correct. If we get to the point where a student has clicked get help or they want to show the answer, you'll see that there's a burgundy sign there where it actually shows them the final answer. One thing to note, even if students request to get answer, they still have to put the answer in the answer key bar. So yep, it told them it was 25. They wouldn't just be able to go to the next problem. They actually have to put the answer into the search bar. So now I want to talk to you all about the different colors and what the symbols mean, and if you do symbols of success versus score and average for students to be able to see. So these are the colors that we notate how many times the students answered a question, if they've answered it correctly on the first try or not. If you see green or green check mark, if you're in symbols of success, that means they got the question correct on the first try. If you are seeing an orange one, like an orange open circle or orange, and that means that they answered it correctly, but they needed additional support. So they didn't get it correct on the first try. The burgundy with the I call it a lightning bolt, is showing that they needed assistance for the answer. So they were not able to answer the question correctly on their own, which means they hit the show answer button or they needed additional support. And then for the open response questions, so it's kind of as you were asking earlier about, I know a piece of it was asking like, does it auto save for them when they're drawing or writing their answer in? You have to the only thing that's not auto graded is open response for multiple reasons. We want you as a teacher to be able to give the feedback, but the students will see a gray check mark underline, and that's notating on their report that there's an open response question that their teacher will grade. And once it's graded, they'll be able to see the feedback that you give. Here's an example of the student report, like after they've answered a question, answer all the questions, if you use the symbols of success. So one of the things was you ask, will you be able to see how many times the student did a question? We'll look at the report for like the actual, but the hints or attempts, you can see like, oh, Charmaine asked for a hint on a certain question, and then it even notates that I still wasn't able to get the answer correct, even utilizing that hint. But we have the different colors to see on part 1A and problem 2B. I got those correct on the first try. Problem 1B, I was able to get it correct, but it took me a second. Oh, sorry, you can only see part of the screen. All right, are you able to see it better now? Okay, you can see, awesome. But this will be an example of what it'd be for symbols of success. This is the same report, but if you use score and average. So score and average, again, 100% green. I answered that question correctly on the first try. As you can see, the orange has a 67%. So essentially what happens is if you're on score and average, the percentage goes down by about 33% each time. So the first try, if I was looking at this report, I would say like, oh, on problem 3, Charmaine answered the question correctly, but she got it wrong once. If I was at 33%, it was same thing. Oh, Charmaine got it right, but it took her 2 attempts to get the question correct. Also for score and average, it shows the class average on the student report. So I can see as a student, how many the class average based off of the questions that were asked. And then I would still be able to see if I used any hints. And these are just my hints, not the class's hints overall. So a lot of words, a lot of stuff coming at you. I'll pause. What questions do you have thus far about either finding and assigning content or the student view or even the student report? Okay, seeing, I went too fast. Yes. Well, it's been hidden. It's a gem and it came back. But I'm loving that you finally were able to find this. So that makes me happy. Oh, as far as what kind of helps and hints students get, sorry. Yeah, that's not a hint. Okay, so things that are not hints, you might see if there's sometimes there's YouTube videos that'll pop up that are similar to like an explanation of how you could solve the problem, not that specific problem, but an example of that. They also have, there are some questions that'll have where you can ask for assistance from like your teacher, for you can send a message saying like, I need help, or I'm still struggling, come help me please. So besides the actual hints, at the other supports that are embedded in some of the problems right now will be like the video explanations of a similar style of a problem. Any other questions? All right. Feel free to keep throwing them in the chat. I'll keep moving us forward. Let's talk about a good way to introduce assessments to your students. So a couple of things that is really important that your students know is, one, the purpose behind assessments, how to access their assignments, and then how to complete an assignment. So those would be like those three key things that they would need to know. And I think it's really important that, again, you reiterate that assessments is here is like additional practice and support. It's not about final grade, I got you type of thing. We really believe that practice and reinforcement of practice is how students are able to really grow and learn. And so being able to reinforce that skill and that concept is something that assessments is really fostering and supportive of. It's also important for them to know how to access their assignments. So one of the things that I'll share in a moment is just a kind of how to like get your students acclimated in like a week one, or how to introduce assessments to your students. And then also just how to complete an assignment. And so noting like that they will get immediate feedback, because I know that's going to be a different or a new experience. And then also just talking about how to do open response questions. It's really awesome that we have those different tools for students to be able to play around with. We have graphing, we have where they can take pictures, or they can type in or draw or different images. But it would be great as the teacher to kind of set the stage for your expectations of what you want to see in an open response questions. There's a question, is there a live view of a student progression? Are you meaning like, would you like for me to show you what it would look like for a student, like if we went through the problem as a student?
No, so like if they had, like if I gave the assignment to the class and they had 5 minutes left, is there a way I can see how many students were on question 1, question 2, as they're doing it?
Yes, it won't say the question necessarily. Thank you for clarifying your question. So on your report, which we will look at, it will show you the percentage of what they have complete. So if it's so instead of it saying like, oh, Charmaine's on question 2, Carrie's on question 7, it would have like Charmaine's got 10% done, Carrie's got 50% done. So you'll be able to see that on your report as how much of the percentage of the student has finished.
So is that how much they have finished at the end of class, or is that something, if I've given them time in class to work on it, can I see, okay, so-and-so still at 10% and everybody else is at 80%?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
Okay.
A couple of things, that's a really great question too. And thank you for clarifying. A couple of things as far as like messaging for your students, again, like wanting to know, like, this is for feedback to help you. It's okay to try again if you get it incorrect, like using that growth mindset language. But honestly, rooting and grounding your classroom and like, we're using this data for these purposes so that students can know what they're doing, know that they'll see it later, but then also get used to a structure and a routine. But also just knowing like this is for practice and it's okay to make mistakes. One of the reasons why we transitioned into symbols of success was because we were saying that teachers were sharing with students would get anxious if they were saying like the score go from 100% to 67 or to 33 or even to 0. And so really trying to be intentional about, it's not about that number, because that's not what your grade is. You didn't get a 0%. It's about where are you in your learning on this concept and how you as the teacher can support and help them. So really being able to name that and share that language with your students at the beginning. So I'll give us a few moments, or you can come off mute or throw it in the chat. We'd just love to, with the information that you have right now, what challenges do you foresee students having with like getting started and completing their assignments utilizing assessments? Or if you don't think any at all, that's also great.
I was thinking one of the challenges, if my students don't, they want to be right, so they like open another window and kind of search for the answer.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that's why like we have, and you'll see it momentarily, like the practice assignment we have where we suggest like assign this as like practice and really know like we just want you to get familiarized and used to it, and really using that language of like it's not about the school, it's not about like you got the answer wrong, it's really about practice. That was something in my classroom that I had to be intentional about, because I had a lot of students that were like, I want to get it right on the first try, and I'm like, no, I want to know what you know, and it's okay. So it took a lot of reiterating it, but they finally felt comfortable after a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, it took a little bit. Any other things that challenges that you might foresee? Thank you for sharing that. Okay, well, feel free to throw anything in the chat if something comes up. I'll do another pause here because I'm just threw more information at you. Are there any other questions that are coming up for anyone right now? If you'd like to throw in the chat or come off mute to ask, that's perfectly fine. Okay, hearing none. We'll look at the data report now. Okay, so I will just share an example of a data report. So this is just an example of one of our data reports here. And so the question that you were asking earlier, can you see a live view of where students are? This here would be, you see how this one says 0? Probably not the best. I probably could have gave a better one, but that would indicate like, oh, the student hasn't started at all, but it could be at 50%, it could be at 60%, where you can see where students are at different places. If there's a check mark, it means it's completed, but this is what you will be able to see in real time whilst your class is doing the assignment. I wish I had this when I was using it, because it is nice to be able to like pull it up and say like, oh, let me just go stand next to Charmaine, because the rest of the class is at like 60%. She's just out here hanging out at 20%. Or when you're doing those like laps around the room, being able to know like, oh, Charmaine's at this percent. I might just need to go see, does she need additional support? Or just does she need a little hovering like experience or a teacher behind her to get her into the spirit of getting her work done? So this is where you'll be able to see that. A few things that I just want to highlight out. You can look at this from your problem view or from the standards view. And so if in this assignment, there was only one standard that was assigned, but when we did that one example of picking problems, if there's multiple standards that are represented within the curriculum or problems that you assign, you'd be able to see those notated here. And then you'd be able to see the overall class average on where a student is at on a standard. I loved using standard view when we were, again, around time for like getting ready for a test. And so when we would do additional practice around certain standards, I would have this view up and really be looking at, all right, is Charmaine headed to, is my class actually overall headed towards mastery of a standard? Or is there something that I need to redo, like reteach? Is this a whole class reteach? Is this a small group or individual type of reteach? So that's where I would use standard view the most. Also here, you'd be able to see how much time a student spent on a problem. And so like here, when you'll have some kids that'll be like, click, 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 click through. And then you're like, okay, what was that? Or why is their percentage lower, or why does their score look the way it does? This is a nice indicator of like, how much time does this person actually spend on a problem? Also, then we have here where it'll show how many hands that they use. This is where you will see the assess button if there's an open response question. So as a teacher on your end, you would just click the assess button. And this is where you can see like, okay, this is what a student entered in on open response, either words or if they sent an image. We have a couple of nice options where you can type in your comments. We also have a new technology called quick comments. And this is where it utilizes AI that essentially is like, how are you responding to your students in general, and being able to gather that information to generate those comments. So if you have like phrases or different things, like, you know how we have to do report cards and it's like, Charmaine's always being a productive member of the class. Yay. Well, mine actually said, Charmaine spends a lot of time talking. Okay, so I'm working on that. But if that was what, like, you can auto generate those comments in, and so then that way you're able to give the feedback to your students. The one nice part about quick comments is the more that you assign, the more that you utilize those open response questions, the more that it starts to understand and utilize your metrics of how you do grading and scoring. But also you can go in and type in like specific comments. So if you're like, here the student says, I don't know if my answer is, if it's correct, then you can actually say, no, actually you did a great job, or I'm looking for a little bit more detail. Or if you wanted all your students to answer in word form, then you can say, love your picture, but I need your final answer in like written form. Another few things to just point out, we have where you can see the problem average for overall for each individual question. And then we have another concept called common wrong answer. So the common wrong answer pops up if you have 3 or more students answer a question incorrectly using the same answer. So if the answer was 7 and 3 or more of your students said 14, then that's one of those features that are common wrong answer. And I like to use common wrong answer when I was in a classroom, as far as on those like reteach moments, or like, first of all, did my overall class get that as a common wrong answer, or is this a small group? Is there a misconception that I can readdress and notate for additional support? I loved using the report in front of my students. And so the nice part is you can hide information. So here we just have, because it's a demo account, students A, B, C, but you would have their names. You can actually hide the names here so that you can show this. That way students don't know who got what. You can hide the different components of like the time or the hints or the problem averages or what was completed or not. So there's things that you can hide. That way you can just show what the actual problem was and overall average. I would do a lot of like data talks with my students in the class, or just around like, overall, we got a 27% on this question. Like, what do we think we did? Or how can we answer this question differently? Or where was our misconception? And so it's nice to be able to just project this and show this. So one of the things that I did in my classroom was like, the more that we utilize this data and we talked about it, students realized, oh, this is something we're actually gonna do and use on a regular basis. So it took a little bit more seriously as well, because they knew like, we're gonna spend time having conversations around the things that I said or the questions that I answered. And one other thing I just want to point out, if a student, you notice that they did a click through, or if you're like, oh, I need to delete a student's progress or something happened, you can go to the triple dots of that student's name and you can actually delete their progress, so that way they can go back and redo the assignment. One thing we are working on, yay, is to be able to go back and just redo specific problems. We haven't, not yet, it's on its way though. Just noting in the chat that, yes, I agree. It's very helpful when you use the data to explain and to help them learn. And so I'm all about student discourse, students conversation. So I would set the stage for these conversations, but then eventually I had like my student teachers or whatever role you gave them leading these conversations, and even sometimes having these conversations in small groups or table groups and different things. But it's important that students spend time in conversation around their data and actually understand what's going on with, what does that mean? How can I grow? How can I learn? What is it that I need to do differently next time? And learning from each other as well. And again, noting that it's okay if you made a mistake, that's okay. All right, so I'm looking at the time, and I told you I believe I'm starting on time and ending on time, so I don't want to hold you hostage. A thing here is data. Like, if it hasn't came through yet, assistance is really all about the data. Being able to get the quick data that you need to be able to make the necessary adjustments, whether it's a whole class reteach, a small group or a subgroup, or if there's individual needs, but it's about that just in time. I'm gonna bypass this video just to let you know that teacher is really just sharing like the part of the data, how she uses the data to lead and enhance conversations in her classroom and the shifts that she saw. Again, I am gonna share these slides with you, and that will be a clickable link, so you'll have access to view that video if you'd like. And the other thing is being able to how to access a report. So I showed you the report, but let me show you how you can access your reports. So if you're on your web or on your desktop here, and if you go to my assignments, anything that you've assigned, you'll be able to find all of these here. And so you can just navigate over to one. We'll go to one that's been done. You can navigate here. You would just click view my report. And so that's how that thing pops up. You'll be able to see all those different things. If you're like, what do those colors mean again? You can always click on scoring and it'll break down what each of those individual things means. And also with the X's and the triangles, that'll let you know like if a hint was used or if they got the question incorrect the first time, we got it right the second time. So there is a difference between if you see orange with an X and orange with a triangle. Orange with the X is saying that orange with a triangle is like, okay, I used the hint and then I got the question correct, as opposed to orange with an X is just, I got the question wrong the first time, but I got it right on my own. All right, I told you about this plan and I'm gonna put it in the chat for you so that you can actually have it. This document, you can make a copy of it so that way you can utilize it in whatever way you feel is best. But in this, you will have a student tutorial so students can actually see like, oh, this is what assessments is. It's student friendly. It's not like me doing this. It's more like student friendly so you can get students excited about it. And then there's also a student practice assignment. And so that's where I was mentioning before, where you can get students like acclimated with like, ooh, what is assessments? What does it look like? If I clicked on different things, what happens? And also being able to share like what those colors mean and represent, so that students can know like, okay, if I see orange, that means I needed additional support. We also have an open response tutorial, so students are able to view what that is, what that looks like, and what that means. And then they have a practice assignment where they can do open response. So if you want to make sure like, how do you want your open response, like images, or how to play with the different graph features, or doing a coordinate plane, all those things, give them time to play around with that. And there's a couple of different types of questions there, which will have them do, okay, hey, I want help with how, or I want to learn more about drawing in the text box, as opposed to like taking a picture or the different features that they have. But this is just a nice little plan that you can use. Feel free to, you can make a copy, but feel free to utilize it in a way that makes the most sense for you and your students. And we made it to the bitter end. So wanted to reiterate, today's goal was to really make sure that you understood the teacher and the student experience, that you are able to find and assign content within your curriculum, and then have another way, or have a way to introduce assessments to your students. And so these were the things that we covered. We looked at how to make an assignment, how to create them. We played around with what it looks like on the student side. And then we also made sure we had a conversation around like how to introduce your students to assessments. One thing that we really recommend is doing like a bite-sized routine. Depending on what grade you teach or what's going on in the school. Like it's the beginning of the school year. Some of y'all start school today. Yeah, some of y'all are starting school soon. Really, creating a routine, but maybe if you want to just do one thing at a time. So when I first started assessments, I used like exit tickets first. And that way they got used and familiarized with it. Then we infuse in the warm-ups, or then we did practice problems. So that way my students got familiarized and comfortable. Another thing I would say, if you have the lower grades, is I know like computer use in certain grades are starting to have to do their state test on the computer. So introducing them to it slowly, but getting them comfortable and familiarized with the process is really be helpful and beneficial. I am going to put a survey in the chat for you. I appreciate some of y'all saying thanks and things are how this was helpful. Would love for you to just take a few minutes to complete this survey. This is really for feedback for me to just say like, hey, that was lovely. Wish I knew this, or can you do something this way next time? Please be honest and tell me how this experience was for you. Just to notate, this one is for the 16th and it's called Step by Step to Getting Started. As you are doing that, just want to notate, we do have another a webinar on next Wednesday, but you do not need to attend. That one is literally going to be a repeat of this one. And then September 13th is when we'll have the part 2, where it's about the data for this, like basically part 2 of this, like how to really dive deeper into the data. I will put that in the chat as well. That way you can go straight to the website and be able to sign up, just like you were able to sign up here. I will send a follow-up email, and I'll throw the survey in the chat as well, just in case. Okay, I see that it's saying that some of you all need permission. Apologies that it was not set up the right way for you. So that I don't hold you hostage because we're a minute over. I'll send that follow-up email that has the video, the slides, and then I'll also resend the survey with the right permission setting as well. I do appreciate your time and for joining.